Welcome to MSU Friday Live, a reprisal after taking a little hiatus. And joining me today is Morehead State women's basketball head coach and Hall of Famer Greg Todd.
Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, Coach, I'm glad you're joining us. I'm glad we're finally getting a chance to come back. You guys have had a pretty good season thus far, and you got one game left, and probably the biggest rivalry on the schedule, Eastern Kentucky, down at their place tomorrow afternoon.
Definitely. We have had a year a little unique in how many players we lost coming in, and I think our biggest goal was to try to get in the OVC tournament, and our girls battled and didn't realize the league was going to be 20th out of 32, which may not sound great, but for you folks that have followed the OVC, that's probably one of the highest. This is one of the highest years in the history of our league. So there's been a lot of good play. You got right now UT Martin's 50th in RPI in the country. Belmont, I think, is 57. SEMO has been a team that's mid-major ranked, and you just go down the line. It's been very good. And on top of that, the toughest non-conference schedule in the history of our school, playing at Michigan State, at the University of Kentucky, and not to mention Baylor. We've had a tremendous non-conference schedule, and our girls with no experience have really battled through that schedule. And last night had a couple injuries during the game, and we're still able to have a lead late in the game, just not quite good enough to hold on, but a great performance. Couldn't be any prouder of a group, and three seniors who I think went out strong. And as you mentioned, we do have a big rival tomorrow in Eastern Kentucky University, and probably all of our games give Eastern credit. They played very well here. It's probably our one game in conference play that I didn't feel like we had our best game, but give Eastern a lot of credit.
Looking over the totality of your career, from high school basketball, Division III at Transylvania, and then here at Morehead State Division I level, you've won roughly 80% of the games you've ever coached, and I've said this multiple times, I think you're one of the greatest tacticians in terms of basketball coach, from the adjustments you make in the locker room coming out to the second half, and kind of give us an insight of your coaching style and how you've been so successful throughout your career.
Well, I appreciate that very much. Blessed to have good young staff here, and they work our girls very, very hard. And in terms of, I think one thing, I don't know, for whatever reason, one advantage I have is games to me are not as stressful, I think, as some coaches. Now, I'm not saying I don't have some emotions out there, and that, but I think if you're relaxed as a head coach, sometimes that helps your players, and I think that's one thing I have on my side, and I've just had a lot of very good players and had good coaches that have helped develop those players, and good recruiters here, and so been blessed to have a lot of things in our favor, and I've never been one to be afraid to make a change in a game if things. I thought last night our staff, Coach Williams suggested, and I agreed with him, was our first goal last night was take away Austin Peay's great shooters, and we did that, but they were adjusting and getting to the rim and scoring, so we went to zone there in the third quarter, and I think that did really help us, but a lot of that was with Coach Williams, and I think you have to, if things aren't going well, not be afraid to make some changes and be able to play some multiple defenses and be able to mix it up a little bit.
And then another thing throughout your career, a lot of big game experience. At Lexington Catholic, you won 3 straight KHSA state titles. You went, I believe it was twice, to the Division III NCAA tournament. And then here at Morehead State, the WNIT last year, you've won 60-plus games over the last 3, coming into this year, 3 straight 20-win seasons. Is that experience, especially coaching those big games, really help, especially with a young team like you have this year?
Definitely, I think your ultimate goal is to get to the highest level. That I feel like that's everybody's goal, is to take the program to places they haven't been to, and we did have a great run, and obviously just a unique situation. I never had a situation where it started 5 seniors, but I wasn't going to hold that against the seniors, and by doing that, just did create a lot of inexperience this year. But we do. I think our program is in very, very good shape. We were hoping Gabby Crawford would get eligible, and didn't work out through our appeal through the NCAA. But obviously, with Gabby and Eternity Willick and Lauren Carter, who arguably all 3 of those could be our best players, to have them coming in, and Morgan DeFore is a tremendous freshman coming in for next year. I think it's very exciting. We've got a young lady from Moberly who will help us as a shooter, and then you look at this year what's developed. I think Ariel Kirkwood will be a player who's going to leave a legacy here with a lot of positive things. Could be the freshman of the year. And then Ellie Jo Johnson, I think, has come a long, long way from the beginning to the end of this season. And Tamaya Alford's had some solid games. And of course, the biggest positive note as of late's been Jasmine Elston and how she's performed. So we've got quite a bit of experience now coming to next year, and it's going to be a very competitive league next year, maybe higher than 20 when you start looking at the rosters of teams.
And over the last few years, especially in the OVC and just the last few years in general, the game of women's basketball has grown and taken a multitude of steps. Where do you see the next step in women's basketball, maybe in the OVC or just in general, going from here?
Well, I think it's a great point, and I've seen the game. There's just more players. It's probably never going to have the level that the men have, but the percentage is getting better, and you're seeing more good players. And I think it's just evident when you start looking at mid-majors. You're starting to see mid-major teams push Power 5 schools more. We were able to beat Ohio State last year. You're seeing teams in our league, I know, beat Ole Miss this year. There's a definitely more parity amongst players. I think travel ball is a all-time high. You're seeing girls knowing they have opportunities to get scholarships. It's getting more competitive. So I think it's going to continue to rise. I think you're going to see better women's basketball, and definitely I think the future holds that.
It's something that I've talked with Coach Mark Coleman and Matthew Martin previously on the show is ask them their Mount Rushmores of their sport or some of their influences on their career. Do you possibly have a list of a Mount Rushmore for women's basketball or for influences in your career also?
Oh, well, it'd be two different ones, I guess, in terms of women's basketball. I mean, obviously, I think if you're just looking at women's basketball, two coaches that come to my mind would be Pat Head Summit, obviously, and Gino Ariema. I think have really taken the level of excellence, and obviously they're getting the best players in the world, but I think both of them have gotten more attention to the game, and obviously today there's more and more players that are coming on board. But as far as with me, I think had a good high school coach. Curtis Turley was a big impact on me. And then past him, I was a graduate assistant coach down in Richmond at Eastern Kentucky University with Max Good, and I still stayed close to both of those people very, very well, and obviously had a lot of other good influences across in my career, but probably those two have had the most impact.
You know, you mentioned Coach Turley, and we've had an opportunity just as a staff here to see some old tapes of his games through you. What's one thing that he kind of ingrained on your career as a coach and as a player?
You know, I think his passion, his enthusiasm, his work ethic, those were things that just how much basketball meant to him, I think was something that, you know, I'll never forget playing for him, and how much he gave to our program. I think it was just incredible, and just his energy as a human. And we had a gathering this year in Henderson, Kentucky. He's also coached a lot of schools, and we had I think over 100 people come to the event. And it was going to be such a large event. Couldn't bring our wives in because of how full it was, and it ended up, you know, having just a huge crowd to listen to everybody talk, and how much impact, you know, he's had on so many people. And but I was very blessed. Was on his first teams, and definitely a great role model for me.
You know, and you talk about your playing days at Berea High School. Yeah, I believe you are still the school's all-time leading scorer.
It's sad for the school that I am still that after all these years. They need to get their program together. But no, I actually, as my first coaching job was down at Berea, but was a good experience. We had, you know, I tell people my son who's playing high school basketball. I know today's era the players are better. It's hard to argue that. But in the time frame that I was at Berea, you had players like Dirk Minifield, Jack Givens, James Lee. You had Vince Taylor, Michael Scarce. There was just a plethora of very good players at University of Kentucky. Had offered and that played in the NBA, and and Melvin Turpin. I played against Melvin once, and you're looking at 4 or 5 NBA players in the Lexington area for the most part, versus, you know, from 1979 until today. There's been very few NBA players. I think Mac made it, and I don't think he was offered a scholarship at Kentucky. There's been very few players that have been offered a scholarship out of Lexington from that time frame. So we weren't as competitive with the better Lexington schools, but it was a good time. We had some good teams, but not as competitive as most of the Fayette County schools.
Yeah. And then from there, we're kind of transitioning to the Hall of Fame portion of your career. You're obviously in the Berea Hall of Fame as both a player and a coach. The Lexington Catholic Hall of Fame, both of those this past year, and then 2 years ago, the Kentucky High School Hall of Fame. And you know, you molded a lot of great players at Berea, but then at Lexington Catholic, you know, your career in terms of high school basketball really took off, and you had a lot of great teams there.
I've been very blessed to have a tremendous amount of talent and players, and Catholic was unusual, the talent level that we had, and I think still to today. Last year I coached in 2005 and 6 was the highest ranked team. We were third in the nation at the end of the season, which is, I think, at the end of the season, the highest girls or boys team. So that was obviously an incredible, talented team, and won the state championship in 2005, you know, with 6 or 7 Division I players. And 2001, we won state championship with with probably less talent, but was a fun team. We upset Jackson County that year, who at one time they were number two in USA Today. But probably of all the years of games that I've coached and been able to be part of wins, probably the '98 Berea team was very, very special. We were in the regional tournament with eight teams that make the region. 7 were in the top 20 that year, and to be able to win that region, upset Lexington Catholic when it was at Berea was just a tremendous experience. And then to be able to go to Richmond and play the state tournament with sellout crowds probably is about as special as you can get, and kind of jumping around. But obviously last year's Ohio State win, obviously for me, was a very special thing. And I guess my goal and aspirations is to help this program get an OVC championship, and obviously we feel like the next few years here, we'll be able to do that.
And return back to the 3 Hall of Fames that you're a part of. What does that recognition kind of mean for you, just personally?
I think it's a little surreal for me to think about Hall of Fames. Obviously, I certainly don't think of myself as necessarily a top coach. I just feel like I've been in a good situation and been very fortunate to connect with a lot of good people, and I've always enjoyed work. I've been being coaching to me has never been something that I've dreaded doing. I've always enjoyed what I do, and even coming out after a tough loss last night, it stung for a little bit, but you get back in there and really want to beat EKU on Saturday. But Hall of Fames are, I think they're great, but it's just kind of been a whirlwind. Haven't gave it a lot of thought, but certainly it's very humbling, and it's a fine line. You've got to have somebody that believes in you to hire you, and I think been able to move kind of up the ladder with a lot of people that have believed in me, and you owe a lot of that to those people, and it's very very humbling.
Yeah, you mentioned right there moving up the ladder. So you moved from the high school ranks to Transylvania at the Division III level, and then I believe it was 6 years ago
this is my 6th year.
You came here to Morehead State. What's kind of the differences between those levels of basketball, if any exist at all?
Well, it's kind of unique because when I took over Transylvania, they were in a little bit of a down cycle. So to go from having one of the top teams, I felt like we might have a shot at being number 1. I didn't want to lose the opportunity to coach, and especially be able to stay in Lexington and do that. And I knew the reputation of Transylvania and had opportunity there, and took that. But it was difficult to leave such a program that we had built. But I think we had once we started getting the proper players in there, I felt like things were able to move, and they were transitioning. Mark Turner had done a very good job as a head coach when they were scholarship, but it's a big transition to go from NAI, where you're fully scholared, to Division III, to where pretty much players come in and are paying the same amount as every other student, and I think that was a little harder, and that's where the program had sort of dipped. So it was kind of my job to come in and find those athletes that would have a good niche there, and we were able to do that. And they've been able to continue. The program there is doing very well. I think they've been ranked in the top 20 this year, and very happy for that program. But it was a good situation, and obviously a big difference coming into Morehead State, where you're Division I. You've got full full scholarships in a league that's continued to get better, and it's been a good challenge. And we didn't want to have a year kind of like where we were this year. I knew coming in we were going to have to rebuild, but I think the situation this year's been good in how our team has handled things and how stacked up we are for the future.
Now, you have a very resilient group, and then to just kind of take something from the previous conversations I'd had with Coach Martin and Coach Coleman. I believe it was Sarah Martin, assistant coach for the volleyball and beach volleyball programs, asked Matthew, what's one word to describe your program? What would be that word for you?
One, as far as program for this season?
In your entire time here, or this season, or however you want to frame that. Yeah.
I think this year's team, I would say more perseverance. They've been a very resilient team. As far as career, hopefully something more on the lines of being excellence and being a program that is that people are proud to come into, and I think we've seen our recruiting base go up, certainly from the time we've been able to get our program to higher levels.
You mentioned recruiting, and I remember a comment made about your recruiting process a couple of years ago, and how you connected with the recruits. And I believe this was Darian Seward that said this at Media Days a couple of years ago.
Right.
You're a rap and a hip hop fan.
I don't look like it. I don't talk like it. But certainly having a young son, my son listens to a lot of rap music, but probably got that from me. Just I think with our team, it would, I think, be a mistake if I didn't know a lot of their interests, same as you would have. I'd probably end up. You hate to say it as a coach, but sometimes you may end up spending as much time with your players as you do your own kids. So, I think if you're, and I've been fortunate, Renee and I have had three kids, and obviously you're very involved with that. As your players, I think you have to definitely know a little bit their music, and I can't say that sometimes when they're loosening up, play some of their music that I know all of their songs, but or want to know all their songs. But definitely, I think it does surprise some of the recruits if I bring up a rapper or two, and you got to kind of keep abreast of that. So yeah. Okay,
on that line of thinking, who are some of your favorite artists then?
Well, as far as me, really like now Nelly's not a rapper, but I love about every Nelly song, which that's good for me. And Flo Rida is, and again that's not as much rappers, but my son's a big Fetty Wap fan, so I did like him. He's into the baby, and there's Gucci Mane's a little bit too far out for me, but there's kind of a long list. It's kind of interesting profession for sure.
I like that kind of divergence there. Other than music and basketball, is there anything else outside of the coaching profession that you kind of are very involved in? I know you're a big baseball fan.
I used to be a big baseball fan, and my Reds. Baseball aggravates me because of the whole payroll thing. I mean, I grew up in the '70s when everybody sort of had a shot, and I saw the Big Red Machine, and I was a Dusty Baker fan when he was able to get some pitching in, and followed those teams a few years ago. But yeah, once Joey Votto's contract was signed, I love Joey Votto. I'll actually stop the TV and watch Joey bat, but his contract killed my Reds. I felt like they would never have a winning season once they signed that amount of money for his age. But they have picked up some good players. But probably my biggest hobbies have been tennis. played a lot of tennis over the years. Got kind of a bad elbow now and bad knee and bad hand, but other than that, I'm pretty healthy. But also play. Kind of moved over to something a little easier on the body, pickleball.
Okay.
My wife is big into pickleball as well, so that's try to stay active, try to move around, try to move a little bit every day. Is try not to think about my age from time to time, because I know most people in this building are a lot younger, but I do try to move a little bit.
Well, we'll also remind everybody that comment about Joey Votto's contract is for your media relations contact and my colleague Ted McCord.
Yes.
As he loves to bring that one up. But also, Coach, I never took you as a guy that was going out to play tennis a lot.
My body probably doesn't look like a tennis player. I just once basketball was over for me, I've always enjoyed the competition. So tennis has been a fun game. I mean, former coach here has given me a few lessons. Kyle Macy, I'm not on his level, but guy here in town that owns BP play
Okay.
Billy Fouch quite a bit. We have some fun matches, but yeah, it's just it's a game that you can get a good workout in, and it's I'm very competitive and enjoy competition.
Okay, so just based on competition, if you were to create an ideal tennis match for yourself, any player in the world, who would you pick?
Well, the big three right now. I mean, if you're just looking at an era of tennis, I think it's just incredible. The three, and those guys just won't go away. I mean, it's just like they're all Grand Slams right now. I think Roger has 20 Grand Slams. I think he's had some knee surgery and he's out. And probably Rafael Nadal will tie his 20 mark for Grand Slams after if he wins the French Open for forever how many times. And then Novak Djokovic probably will end up breaking both of their records. But it's just, you think, we always talk about, whether it's Michael Jordan and LeBron James, about talking about, the difference in a generation or whatever. It just seems like these three guys they won't let this any new generation break in. They just continue to dominate. So I have a tremendous amount of admiration for all three of those guys.
Well, and then just kind of on the same line, you mentioned the Grand Slams. If you could win one of them, which one would you pick?
It would definitely be the French Open. I think and I know Nadal has dominated that, but to me that's the best tennis player, because the big serves and volleys are, particularly serve. Volleying has kind of gotten to be an old thing, but the serving is so dominant in the other three. But on the clay really slows it down. So it comes down to what player has got the best forehand backhands and can move on the court. So that to me would be the best tennis player would win the clay.
I like that assessment. I probably would have said Wimbledon because for
history and sure.
And then just some last couple things, just transition back to basketball. You mentioned the win against Ohio State last year in the WNIT. What are some other big moments for you in your career here at Morehead State?
I think the third year that we were able to finish second in the league, come from basically a 10-win season that we had our second year. Knew we were going to be better. Didn't feel like we were going to jump to second, but we beat every team in the conference that year with the exception of Belmont. So it was just nice to run through that league, and was amazing year. And we had Coach Jump, Coach Duck were new that year. Coach Brown had been with me for third year. Just an amazing run to beat UT Martin on the road. If you're just looking at some individual wins, I've got a lot of respect for their program, and I think we've won 4 in a row against them last year. Those are always tough, hard-fought wins because Kevin's a good coach, but he also gets the fact that tricky players are better than tricky plays, and Kevin's always got a full roster of players. If he can keep them all healthy, and certainly wins against his teams are special. But this league has got a lot of good coaches, so it's there's just not many nights off, and I think it's a grind to win in this league, and so But I guess with UT Martin's success that they've had, to be able to have a good run against them, it was definitely been big. But we've had it's always been good to play Kentucky. I'd like to play them a little bit better. I was proud of how we competed with them this year, but as far as getting a win down at Memorial's tough. But I do appreciate our relationship with Coach Mitchell and opportunity to get to play them, and we've got them on schedule next year along with Baylor, and so but I think probably more of the conference is always big, trying to get those. But we've won games here against bigger leagues. The MAC, I think, is a league that's a little bit stronger, definitely pumps in a lot of money in their league. We've had some wins against Eastern Michigan, Miami there. We've had some fun wins.
Yeah, and you mentioned a lot of big wins, and then in that you also mentioned some numerous assistants that you've had. You've had a lot of great assistants in your time here. Some that are still here, but some that have moved on, some different coaching jobs. How has their success helped this part of your career?
It's always rewarding. I know Brittany Parker is at Marist now. She helped us get her program going. She was a big recruiting factor in Miranda Crockett. Lazar Milinkovic has done very well at Marshall. Their program's, I think, been turning in the right direction. Jim Brown's a person that I'd known for a long time, stayed with me for 3 years here, and he's full-time granddad down. He was at our game last night. But Dominique Duck has, I think, got a chance she could be a head coach very easily, does a lot for our program. But I think she's comfortable here, and appreciate every day that she gives us. Certainly Abby Jump is one of the most outstanding coaches I've ever been around. Her work ethic and how much she cares for the program, and how hard the girls fight for her. I mean, she's done an incredible job at Wright State. I'm sure her impact has had a lot to do with our success. And then I think Clint Williams. I don't know how long we'll be able to keep a guy who's bringing in the recruits that he's bringing in here, but certainly hope. I know he's excited about next year, but he's an amazing recruiter. And Justin Moss in his first year, I think has been a good influence in our program. So it's a very big part of what we do, and we've also had some graduate assistants that have gone along. Of course, Justin was with us last year, and Abby Owens has moved up and coaching over at Shawnee State, and so we're definitely. It's nice to have that coaching tree branch out and move in a lot of different directions.
And then lastly, Coach, let's look ahead to tomorrow. Big rivalry game. How do you feel about that game? And then, what kind of message you have to our fans about making that short trip down there and watching your group?
Right. Well, it's at my alma mater. Obviously have some special feelings for Eastern. I coach there with Coach Good, but as a rival, I don't like them. I don't like them like everybody else in their league. I don't. If you ask me, team for team, the years I've been here, the one school that I've been most disappointed with I don't feel like I've done a real good job getting our girls ready to play Eastern Kentucky. We played them okay at home, and we've got some wins against them. I'd like to beat them every time, and I guess we've had some disappointing games there over my career. Not so much here until this year. Like I said, this year I would take about every Tennessee Tech at home was not real pretty, and Eastern was for me worse game. But like I said, I still give them a lot of that credit. They played well, and Samantha's doing a good job with their program. But definitely a school that would like just that closeness and rivalry. Seems like their program has done a little better job. Their staff and players have done a better job of getting them ready to play us than maybe we have. We've probably had more success over the last few years, but we just felt like going down to Richmond's not been our best place to play.
Well, Coach, thank you for your time today. This has been a very enlightening talk we've been able to have. Hope that someday down the line we'll have you back on for a longer show, talk more of the totality of your career. But best of luck tomorrow. Look for your club and Coach Preston Spradlin's club to come back with 2 wins in this big rivalry.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
This has been MSU Friday Live with Morehead State women's basketball coach Greg Todd. I want to thank you for watching, and go Eagles.